rise and shine. And it's just not any morning, it's a wonderful morning because it's the morning of the day we celebrate women the world over. All of us, we have phenomenal women in our lives. In fact, I don't know of any woman who's not a phenomenal woman, because once she has born a child, she's phenomenal. And even if she didn't bear a child, because she has to bear with other people, she's also phenomenal. Yes, in fact, I've not experienced childbirth myself, but I would like to hazard a guess that if men were to experience labor and childbirth, the human race would be extinct. Today is the 105th celebration, as we know it, of International Women's Day. And I'm sure here in St. Kitts, we are as happy as others around the world to be able to celebrate the achievements, the accomplishments, the contributions of women in our federation. I have a theory. The reason why we are called woman, is because we are the wonder of the man. And that's why we get the Yeah, y'all stick with me. So that time when a woman came out of Adam, that was the first and only time that a woman came from man. Every other time now, man now comes from woman, and we give thanks.
The road to Beijing, Fourth World Conference of Women, 1995, to our present global reality, has been watered with the sweat, tears, and blood of women and the gender-sensitive men who understand that development is not engendered, but is endangered. Nations worldwide committed themselves to the active pursuit of gender equality in the Beijing Platform for Action. Yet, despite states' solemn commitment to the advancement of women and girls and the empirical information that indicates that gender equality benefits all, the practice of keeping women outside of the development loop in many sectors still persists. Progress of the World's Women 2015-2016 indicates that women in Latin America and the Caribbean still find themselves in large numbers in low-income, poor-quality jobs responsible for most of the unpaid domestic and care work and grossly underrepresented at decision-making levels of their countries. If parity, therefore, is to be realized by 2030, there has to be increased momentum. International Women's Day, which has been celebrated in some parts of the world for over 100 years, is an opportunity to enlist support for the cause of gender equality and to highlight the challenges yet to be surmounted and the successes to be celebrated. The theme this year is an action-driven one. It encourages us all to pledge to advance gender parity in every aspect of national development. No one is excluded, since all of us have influence, whatever our positions in life. Whether we function at the level of the family, the community, entry level, middle management, upper management, or national leadership, we can actively influence the realization of gender parity through our actions and policy decisions. Pledging for parity in order to realize Planet 50/50 by 2030 is the call for International Women's Day 2016. Are you someone on whom the achievement of this noble endeavor can depend? On behalf of the Honorable Eugene Hamilton, the Honorable Wendy C. Phipps, Permanent Secretary Janelle Lewis Tafari, and the staff of the Ministry of Community Development, Gender Affairs and Social Services, I take this opportunity to welcome you to our International Women's Day celebration and to implore you to personalize the struggle for gender equality. This is a universal struggle and demands universal participation. Thank you for listening, and happy International Women's Day.
On behalf of the federal government of St. Kitts and Nevis, I am pleased to congratulate every single woman in St. Kitts and Nevis, but especially those in the room with us this morning. Happy International Women's Day. So my remarks are going to be brief, but in so doing, I would also like to have us refocus, as the Director of Gender Affairs began this morning, on the theme for the 2016 International Women's Day celebrations. And the theme is Planet 50-50 by 2030, Step It Up for Gender Equality. And the sub-theme being Pledge for Parity. Now, throughout the day and throughout the next 45 days for the department, we will be conducting and hosting various events that will continue the theme that has been chosen by UN Women and International Women's Day Organizing Committee, etc. And the reason for that is to really shed light on the issues that are pertinent to women. Now, we have all heard in one form or another how International Women's Day started. In a nutshell, it was the result of women advocates who wanted better conditions of work, the right to vote, and a host of other simple things that we today take for granted. Nevertheless, gender parity is an issue that is long in coming. Basically, the World Economic Forum has assessed in 2014, and they did so again in 2015, that gender parity is something that might be outside of our reach for another 117 years. They have actually pegged the date as 2133, and I could imagine that none of us in this room will be alive to see that. So it tells us that we need to step it up and hasten the pace in terms of seeing the type of parity we want to see for our women folk in St. Kitts and Nevis and the rest of the world. Some of the statistics that I would have reviewed, including some of the media programming that would have been aired by agencies such as the BBC, have attested that it is only about 20% of positions of leadership that women the world over occupy. There was a specific reference to the country of Japan, who wanted to get that figure up to 50%. And as a result of that, the Japanese Prime Minister would have articulated very early in his most recent term in office that he wanted to make sure that at least 30% or so of the women in parliament are females. However, the glaring statistic is that if we are lucky, we are only seeing that in countries such as Japan, that rate is not even 20%. It is more like 18%. What I would tell you, however, is that in spite of the global statistic, when it comes to the public sector of St. Kitts and Nevis, there has been some dramatic improvements in that regard. You would agree with me if I pointed to the table on my left, which is populated mostly by permanent secretaries, that within the government system, there are about maybe 80% of the permanent secretaries that are already female. And for that, we should applaud. In a number of the private sector institutions in St. Kitts and Nevis, women are within the boardroom, but not necessarily with the title of CEO. We've seen some of that, however, in the banking system, for example, in National Bank. We have seen others in terms of central bank staff appointments, etc. But there is still a long way to go and a high hill to climb. But the point and the message that I would like to leave with us this morning is that inasmuch as agencies such as the UN, UNIFEM, UN Women, whatever groups we call ourselves, focused on women's issues, whatever strides we may be taking towards parity for women has to begin with us as individuals. It starts with how you see yourself. It starts with how you see yourself elevating. It continues with the belief system that you have inside of you. Do you think that you have what it takes? Yes, it is true that we might say that it's a male-dominated society, but I always believe that you get what you negotiate. Things just don't happen for you if you're a trailblazer. You have to make it happen. And incidentally, making it happen was the theme for the 2015 International Women's Day celebration. So basically, what I would like to leave with us this morning is that we have a collective and we have an individual responsibility to make the type of future for St. Kitts and Nevis happen with us, not just in terms of women's advancement and advocacy and then running the risk of becoming ultra-feminist and forgetting that there is a role for men to play in human development, because there is a role. And that is why I keep saying gender affairs is not a synonym for women's affairs. It means the issues of men and women as it relates to their development, and by extension, the development of the country that we call home. What that means is that we have to take it upon ourselves as individuals to see the type of St. Kitts and Nevis we want to have, where women occupy their rightful places. It also means, to do that, women, we must educate ourselves. We do education as an endeavor, not because you want to get a higher paying job, but it's for your own personal edification. I am sure there's some of you in this room who would recognize that just having a master's degree or bachelor's degree doesn't mean you get a big salary. You do that to improve yourself. It's not about comparing yourself with the other person, because their journey is different from yours. It's about what is relevant for you. What do you want for you? What do you want for your daughters, your nieces, your aunts, your cousins? And it's about women supporting other women. I have worked both in the private sector and in the public sector, and what I will tell you is that some of the biggest detractors and critics of women are other women. It is a sad reality, but it is a true reality. And that is why over time you might hear some women say, I have more men friends than women friends, because you can't trust them. Okay? So in other words, one of the other requisites I would leave with you is that in an attempt to figure out who you are and what you want, and in building the construct of developing and believing in yourself, you have to determine the types of people you want around you. Are there people who help you, or are there people who harm you? Are there people who encourage you, or people who envy you? Are there people who want the best for you, or are there people who want your downfall? In other words, as my mother would tell me, as you grow up, you see yourself as a tree. And over time, the tree is tossed about in the wind, and leaves fall off, and new leaves grow back. And she would tell me that the leaves that stay on the tree are those that were meant to stay with you. But the wind is there, and the struggles are there to make sure that the dead leaves drop off. And that is what I would like to say to you this morning. Believe in yourself. Support the women in your life. Don't use men as an excuse for you not achieving, because quietly, men might be your biggest supporters, and you don't know that. In other words, I'm also saying it calls for self-love. If you don't love yourself, nobody's going to love you, because it begins with you. One of the things that I was grateful for is the way in which I grew up in terms of my spiritual upbringing, being a Roman Catholic, French Roman Catholic for that matter. Jennifer Howell knows what I'm talking about, because she's a French Catholic as well. And one of the things that people often ask me is, why are you Catholic? And my answer is a question. You should ask me why I remain Catholic. And I have 3 answers for that. I remain Catholic because of the fact that I can trace the apostolic succession of my church back to Jesus Christ. That's one reason. I've remained Catholic because I believe in the power of the Eucharist. And I've remained Catholic because I believe in the respect for women that Roman Catholicism believes in, by virtue of the role that they have given to the Blessed Mother, who is the mother of our Lord Jesus Christ. And it is when I look at a day like International Women's Day, I could sit back and say, this is another reason why I've chosen to remain Catholic, because it teaches us what motherhood is about. Not just carrying a child for 9 months, but being a mother to somebody else's child. We have children in St. Kitts and Nevis who do not have the benefit of good mothers, but there are plenty of us out there who could do some mentoring and some grooming to help them. So in other words, what I'm trying to tell you is that when you have finished actualizing, if we're going to use Maslow's hierarchy of needs as a guide, then there comes a point, or there should come a point, where you look back and you say, what can I do for somebody else? And hopefully in answering that question, one of the persons you will reach out and help is a young person who probably thinks the world of you and might be the only mother that they see when they look into your eyes. So again, I congratulate you, and I ask us to please take your role as woman seriously. It is a treasured role, it is a sacred trust. Happy International Women's Day.
Sometimes your contribution as women goes unnoticed. And even sometimes we as men don't want to say this. Women, you have come far. You are where you are now, where you were not before. You have suffered a great deal of injustice and so much pain you had to endure. I urge you to rally together and make a bold stand and profess you're no man's property. You shouldn't be treated like a piece of land. As I read this poem, I exercise some caution, but I think the rights of women merit some attention. Women ought to have the same liberty because they pay the same taxes as you and me. There was once a time you couldn't earn any income. That was considered to be the job of a man. Women, God has aided you in enterprise and enabled you to obtain the parliamentary franchise. You have risen from the ashes and soared to a new plane of existence, unfettered by things that was once posed as such resistance. Some may say men mostly responsible for war and poverty, and that women are the glue that binds all humanity. You are mothers, your grandmothers, your sisters, aunts, and friends. You are nurturers, the greatest strength to any man. Women, they are marvelous, also it would seem to me, just like my mother. So for this International Women's Day, take the pledge for parity. Happy International Women's Day.
For years we talk about equality, about women's rights and integrity, lamented about our sovereignty. We beg ball and hold we belly. Today we still try to prove ourselves, stepping down of the homes or from the shelves, mastered impartiality. But as parents, we've learned misery, and there is so much more that I think we have to do. Cause women, we've lost the natural will to be true. And there are so many things that have gone wrong. Women, we think we still have to stay strong, while our children are killing each other or pregnant without a father. Women, it's time that we come together and secure our children's future. Our fight was once for parity, now we fight against everybody. Do you agree? Do you agree? So no more we pull down with sister. If she fall, we should just help her. We bonding for sure. No more. Let's be nice, bad attitude start changing. We bonding for sure. Women, it's time to communicate. Let's stop humiliate. Cause you don't need to pull a sister down just to elevate. No, we don't need to pull a sister down just to elevate. Oh yeah. Ah, bam 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 Monday. Ah, mama na na na. Mama da da ma da da mama de. Ah, oh yeah. No longer we demand their respect, or callous behavior is what they expect. The whole world now is laughing at us, but at least that's the consensus. Our authority has been compromised, our strength and supremacy is our demise. The time is now, so let's make that change. I thought that's not out of range. So when a sister worked hard to make her way to the top, we need to support and stop praying for her to drop. Synergy is the word that we're missing. Come together, it means the same thing. Let's do one more time and stop building them to the top. To achieve and excel and as well one another. She's your sister, you're my sister, like I'm your sister. So no more we If she fall, we should just help her. We bonding for sure. No more name calling, no more gossiping. Let's be nice, bad attitude start changing. We bonding for sure. Women, it's time to communicate. Let's stop humiliate. Cause you don't need to pull a sister down just to elevate. No, we don't need to pull a sister down just to elevate. Oh yeah. This is one for the vault. Oh yeah. Oh yes. Life's too short for bitterness and spite, so think about it and choose your fight. Women all over, I'm so proud of you. To yourself, you should be true. There'll always be negativity, but never let it keep you in captivity. The world is your state, so model with pride, and the light you never hide. Please join in, let's create a better world. Cause only together our true strength can unfold. And there are so many things that will go right. Community and society will rise. Empower our young women. There's no very one. Women is longer with a competition. If you got a woman, find your own man. Be confident in your ability. Do you agree? Do you agree? So no more we pull down with sister. If she fall, we should just help her. We bonding for sure. Women is like on the more starting. Bad attitude start changing. We bonding for sure. Women, it's time to communicate. Let's stop humiliate. Cause you don't need to pull a sister down just to elevate. No, we don't need to pull a sister down just to elevate. Oh yeah. Thank you. We bonding for sure. Women, it's time to communicate. Let's stop humiliate.
First of all, I want to congratulate all the remarkable women who are awardees today. And of course, the men who are associated with them. I also want to acknowledge those men who today have been sensitive to the choice of color usually associated with women. That is pink, and I'm going to point in particular to the acting Prime Minister. There may be other men, of course. I haven't actually seen them, but if there are other men supporting the color, thank you very much. When I was asked to be the keynote speaker, I was, of course, tremendously honored. And then I looked at the theme, Pledge for Parity, and I thought, what? I went to the dictionary. Pledge, a solemn promise. Parity, a state or condition of being equal. So I've interpreted that to mean that on this International Women's Day, we are being called upon, challenged in fact, to make a solemn promise that we will work towards a state of equality. But that in itself is not straightforward, because are we looking at equality or equity? Now, in passing, I'll say that I was out with some friends the other night, and when I told them about the topic, because I was looking for ideas and so on, there was a rather heated argument as to whether parity meant equality. My speech today is not so much a directive as an encouragement for us all to get involved in the conversation about parity and where we go from here. Now, the letter of invitation to me from the ministry states, "This day, International Women's Day, is an ideal occasion to acknowledge and celebrate the contributions of women in the growth and prosperity of our federation, and to champion our leaders and role models in our society." I think that's very important. Now, the International Women's Day campaign organization asks, how do we want to celebrate International Women's Day 2016? And it answers its own question by saying, and I have to put on my glasses because it's not only Dawn who's reached the stage of, beyond 35, I'll say. Now, this is how the International Women's Day campaign organization answered its question. It said, everyone, men and women, can pledge to take a concrete step to help achieve gender parity more quickly, whether to help women and girls achieve their ambition, call for gender-balanced leadership, respect and value difference, develop more inclusive and flexible cultures, or root out workplace bias. It goes on. Each of us can be a leader within our own spheres of influence and commit to take pragmatic action to accelerate gender parity. And gender, itself is a word that is not as straightforward as it might be. But this is not the day for going down that road. The campaign statement goes on. Globally, with individuals pledging to move from talk to purposeful action, and with men and women joining forces. Yes, we mustn't forget the men, because we need to take them along with us. And so, with men and women joining forces, we can collectively help women advance equal to their numbers and realize the limitless potential they offer economies the world over. When we look at other countries and at a world of human suffering, we in St. Kitts and Nevis have much to celebrate today, which doesn't mean that we must be complacent, but let us look at some of the successes of our women. We've not yet had a female Governor General, nor have we had a female Prime Minister, although Her Excellency Constance Mitchum has acted as Prime Minister in the past. We now have the first female Assistant Commissioner of Police, Ms. Marceline Hughes. The OECS has a female Chief Justice, Dame Janet Pereira. Our 2 High Court judges are female. The Registrar of the High Court is female. The Master of the High Court is female. And several of our magistrates are female. It might also be said that we are awash with female doctors and female lawyers. And there are women in leadership positions in schools and in a large number of senior positions in society. Does that mean there's parity? The answer has to come from the conversations that you have had and will have, I hope, with your friends, your business colleagues, your political associates, and other connections that you may have. I will quote from an article written by one Sadhana Smiles, an author and public speaker. She says, "How will you pledge for parity in 2016? What conversations will you start? Who will you mentor and elevate? How will you consciously make decisions this year that will be great for business, remarkable for humanity, memorable for future generations, and simply good for your soul? End of quotation. Now, we can't just sit back and expect parity to jump up and hit us in the face. The women who are here today, all of you, all of us, are here because it is recognized that you have power. You have a power to be vocal, a power to be advocates, a power to help move the cause of women forward. But let it not be thought, that we are beating down on the men. Far from it. The power that we have is the power to convince those men who are not yet converted that we have just as much to offer as they do. On merit. We are not asking for tokenism. That's a subject I know that is dear to the minister's heart. I heard her talk about this. Now I say that those of us who may be in a position to provide jobs for others, must be able to recognize merit. We must recognize excellence in our fellow women. That's part of helping us to achieve parity. Sometimes we are not as supportive as each other as we might be, and I think that comes out in Queen Kibi's song and in other things that others have said. Sometimes we women are really our own worst enemies, in terms of helping women to achieve parity. We talk other women down. Why? We have women sabotaging other women for short-term gain, not able to appreciate the bigger picture. There are traits that we might regard as acceptable in a male employee or manager or colleague or whatever, but which we criticize negatively in women workers or colleagues. Oh, she's so picky. She's so intense. I don't think she's able to work well with other people. She wants to micromanage. But we might say about a man performing the same way. Oh, he's really good, because he likes his I's dotted and his T's crossed to make sure that everything's all right. Even the tone in which we say these things is different. Now, what else can women do to help achieve parity? We can make sure that we make ourselves qualified or trained for the job we're after. We can't just sit back and say, I didn't get that job because I'm a woman. Now, maybe you actually didn't get that job because you're a woman and because some poor misguided soul has used that excuse for not giving you the job. But the first thing that you must do is to make sure that you're qualified for the job you want and start from there. The other day, a woman said to me that even though women may have the same or expect the same status, a woman's obligations and responsibilities in terms of childbearing, and in her words, squeezing out the tiny humans, because of women's obligations and responsibilities, it means or could mean that there may not be equity in equality. That's something we have to think about. I thought that that was a very deep statement, and I'll illustrate what that means with a pictorial comment at the end of my speech. I actually said, wow, when that woman said that to me. There may not be equity in equality. Now, going off in a different direction, although we can't just sit back and expect governments to legislate for parity, over the years, governments have helped to move the cause of women forward. By their actions, they made a pledge for parity. and it is up to our generation to maintain and enhance the actions that were taken so long ago. There is a significant statement relating to women, which was in the People's Action Movement's manifesto of 1984. And it says, the People's Action Movement gives priority to implementing the recommendations of the World Conference of the International Women's Year and is committed to, i.e., is pledged to, 1, giving sustained attention to the integration of women in the formulation, design, and implementation of development projects and programs. 2, establishing machinery to monitor the integration of women in development and to identify any obstacles preventing women from attaining equal status. And 3, introducing legislation when necessary to meet the needs of the changing roles of women. To the above ends, the People's Action Movement has, this is how it continued in that statement, has A, established a women's desk to coordinate and promote the development of women, B, appointed a director of women's affairs, and C, established a council on the status of women for the following purposes: to function as a barometer in perceiving and assessing the needs of women, to identify the needs of women in a socio-economic context, to develop strategies to address their needs, to coordinate the activities of the various women's groups, to assist in the training and development of women's groups, to help create an awareness among women as to their role in the development of our new nation. That was in 1984. And most significantly, one of the final statements says, additionally, the People's Action Movement has removed the regulation requiring unmarried pregnant women to resign from the public service. If you were pregnant and unmarried, you had to resign from the public service. That was making a pledge for parity. Fast forward to 2012. We now have the Equal Pay Act 2012. I'm not aware of any commencement date, and I'm not sure what's happened to that act. But it's an act to make provision for the removal and prevention of discrimination based on the sex of the employee in paid employment and to provide for related or incidental matters. And then there is a section 3 headed Equal Pay for Equal Work to redress the disparity. You know, at the moment we're asking for parity, and this is to redress the disparity. And it says, an employer shall not discriminate between male and female employees employed by the employer's establishment by failing to pay equal pay for equal work. And then, subject to the provisions of various other sections, an employer who contravenes these provisions in respect of any employee commits an offense. And it goes on to say what the consequences of committing that offense are. Now, in closing, I'd like to leave you with two thoughts on which to ponder. The first is a statement, and the second is the pictorial comment I promised. The statement was made by one Laila Abulela, an acclaimed Sudanese writer. And this is it. All through life, she says, there were distinctions. Toilets for men, toilets for women. Clothes for men, clothes for women. Then at the end, the graves are identical. Okay, very profound statement and gives us a lot to think about when we're having these disputes about men and women. For the pictorial comment, I want to show you something. I hope that what you see will help you to continue the conversation about what it is we want when we make the pledge for parity. And this is the poster. Thank you.
I listened and took note of the ways in which our government has pledged to parity, and I can attest that they are not just contributing, but they are committed to ensuring parity, equity, that there is a level playing field for all of us. And so let us commend them and thank them for the work that they're doing in this regard.
On the behalf of the Ministry of Community Development, Gender Affairs and Social Services, we want to express our sincere thanks to a number of persons, to thank them severally and individually for their input into what we have shared in this day and what we'll continue to share in. I want to first thank you, each and every one of you, for being here, from the leadership to those who may be considered the least, for your time out, for sharing with us, and for making this a wonderful experience. This morning I counted for myself, I got 28 men. In the room, 126 women. And together we celebrated International Women's Day. So we just give ourselves a We want to say special thanks to our feature presenter, a wonderful speech man. We thank you for your work. We thank you for the brevity. We thank you for the call and the encouragement to join the conversation about parity, and not just to join it, but I'd like to add that we need to shun the conversations that are backwards, underdeveloped, and non-progressive. So we join with you, we applaud you, we thank you, Sister Foreman, for your sharing, and Brother Foreman, thank you for supporting her as well. I'd like for us to understand that this is a call not just to see parity in terms of equality, as good Sister Foreman shared with us, but to see it as being equitable. And when we talk about it, when we join the conversation, we need to not just say things, but be committed to what we say. As we keep our commitment to service, let us understand that we need to be fair to each other as brothers and sisters in humanity. We share things in common. And here's a note of concern. When we talk about parity, please ensure that we have equality and equity amongst our women, not just women in terms of women and men. Thank you very much. God bless you. Have a wonderful day. Continue to support us. We love you.
cannot close out our presentation of awards and good gestures without saying thank you to the lady who has kept us in jocular fashion this morning, Dawn Mills.
I feel so special.